four people, Sheng Thao, Andre Jones, and two members of the Duong family, also part of this as well. They are all indicted on this bribery scheme in which they sought to influence government by bribing, according to the indictment, Mayor Sheng Thao and her partner Andre Jones. And that is what all this is leading to, assuring government contracts for recycling and a housing community, all part of the alleged the allegations made in the indictment by the Department of Justice just now.
As the U.S. Attorney General's office just spoke, with the first ones to speak, they sought to influence the levers of local government. We have the indictment in the newsroom. I was trying to look through it super quickly here on my computer. There are text messages said to be from former Mayor Thao to the Duong family, talking about, you know, did you get it? Did you receive it? Talking about negative campaign mailers that sought to sort of suppress her challengers or in the mayoral race. Interesting to note here, the investigation and alleged misdeeds were said to have begun before she took office.
Right, leading up to
the timeline here is very interesting.
Leading up to it says beginning in an unknown date, but no later than October 7th. I'm reading from the indictment here of 2022 and continuing through at least June 20th of 2024. That is when this investigation encompasses here the timeline. So they sought to influence, the Duong family sought to influence Mayor Sheng Thao before she got into office, and then when she got into office, she was supposed to, according to this indictment, carry out some things in favor of their family, getting them more business contracts.
Yeah, what stuck out to me was that there was a piece where there was payment for an opposition, for election opposition mailers to be sent out for her election against her opponents, paid by these other defendants.
Yes.
So that may have indeed affected the election illegally.
It was a razor-thin margin, if you remember that election.
700 votes.
700 votes between her and Lauren Taylor, who was running for mayor of Oakland at the time. So these negative mailers being part of this is definitely something we got to dig into. Brian Sobel. He's on the phone with us right now, legal analyst. He's been listening along to give us a little bit more insight into what he's heard here. Brian, first of all, give me your reaction after hearing that news conference.
Andre, very disturbing. If these allegations are proven in court, and they have to be, or if one of the defendants were to plead guilty before a trial, then what it says is that the city of Oakland was greatly influenced by what occurred, frankly, before the election, as we're learning. And promises were made to Sheng Thao and her partner to help them get into public office, Sheng Thao, that is, and it's disturbing.
Do we know what sort of punishment the four people who are listed in this indictment could face? I know they have a court hearing at 10:30 back here in Oakland. The news conference we just brought you was happening across the bay in the city. I mean, do you have any idea? They didn't say anything at the news conference.
No, but anytime there's a public corruption conviction, people usually pay a very stiff price, because it's fundamental to our democracy that we play fair in elections. And if these allegations are true, then there was money put up against Sheng Thao's opponents, and that was arranged before the actual election, which tells you that this is a scheme that was in planning stages leading up to an election. Again, these kinds of things have occurred around the country. When they're discovered, the people who are involved are severely punished.
Brian, I imagine these allegations, the evidence has to be rock solid. That's why they started investigating almost 3 years ago now, and they just brought the case. So they were dotting their I's and crossing their T's. The government, at this point, you would assume, has a rock solid case, would you not?
Sal, these things are brought only after there is a considerable amount of evidence. The government does not want to have egg on their face bringing charges that have no merit. So without commenting on whether these allegations will result in a conviction, it is clear that the federal government and all these agencies within the federal government that we watched come to the podium investigated this for a very long time. And, you know, a lot of times, and we heard Sheng Thao at least 3 times in the run-up to these indictments say she was clear. She was not a target of the FBI, but indeed she was.
Yeah, she was very clearly the target of it, her partner, Andre Jones. I'm wondering here, the indictment made specific mention of those mailers that were sent out. So I wonder if there is something dealing with election interference that could be part of this as well. Is that something that would come from this indictment or from someplace else? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that the use of opposition campaign material, which goes on in nearly every campaign, is one thing, but it needs to be declared so that the public understands what money is being put into a campaign. Opposition mailers are not the issue here. The hiding of the money to pay for these mailers is the issue. And there will be more evidence that will come forward. And of course, this alleged $95,000 payment to Sheng Thao's partner for a job maybe that didn't exist is also of great concern. But again, to be clear, in every campaign, there's opposition mailers, and some of them are not very much fun to read. But as long as the people who are paying for them declare that, it's all legal. What they're alleging here is that money exchanged hands to pay for mailers, or the Duongs paid for mailers that were not accounted for in the election accounting, as it were, and that is illegal.
Brian, I want to ask you about disenfranchisement of voters. Now that the voters are finding out that this election may have been tainted, this is exactly what the government wants to avoid, disenfranchisement, because the election could have very well have been turned out differently. How do you get that confidence back? Is this something that the government does specifically to get that confidence back in the system?
Absolutely, because if these monies that arrived to Sheng Thao, her partner, to the company that produced the mailers, and this was unaccounted for. There's more work to be done here, investigation. Then, yeah, it could have tipped that election. It may have tipped that election. If it did, that undermines our democracy. And so the government, in these kinds of cases, comes down with both feet, because you have to restore and assure public confidence in our elections. And haven't we been talking about that for a very long time now?
Can you tell us what happens next? I know the 10:30 arraignment is what we're all looking ahead to.
Garcia, probably a better question for a legal expert, but the case will move ahead. The 10:30 media or the 10:30 arraignments will be very interesting. I'm sure more information will come from those. But this is a case that over the next few days in particular, we're going to be getting a lot more information about. And I think the citizens of Oakland have every right to be extremely upset about at least this initial blast of information and whatever else comes over the next hours and days.
The report seems very detailed, and it seems like there was some hiding it, but as I'm going through the indictment here as we speak, I'm scanning over parts of it here, it seems like some of these bribes they weren't very well hidden, is what I'm saying. I know you haven't had a chance to read it yet because we just got a copy of it, but based on what you're hearing here, did it surprise you about the openness of what was happening here?
It always amazes me, and not necessarily with this particular case, but it amazes me what people will text other people about, what they'll put on social media, what they'll put in writing in general, and then of course you had the IRS component. So there was obviously money that was not declared, income that was not declared. All of these things working together, the Postal Department investigators. It always shocks me when I look at these cases of corruption, not just here, but around the country, and I've looked at many of them, how naive people are about the ability of government and police agencies and federal authorities to uncover what are, in their minds, sophisticated plots.
It is surprising here. We're still going through the details here, and we're waiting for that arraignment here in Oakland, coming up at 10:30 for that.